7 dark triad signs. They're already controlling you, and you don't even know it. And if your stomach just moved when you heard that, if your brain immediately went to a specific person, stay right here. Because what you're about to learn isn't theory. It isn't academic. It is a precise description of what has been happening to you in a relationship you're in right now, or one you couldn't figure out how to leave, or one you finally did leave and still couldn't explain why it was so hard. 7 signs, each one specific, each one behavioral, each one happening right now in real time, in real life. And once you see them, you will never not see them again. Before the 7 signs, I want to describe something. Not a person, a feeling. The feeling of being consistently off balance in a relationship without being able to explain why. Like you're always slightly on the back foot. Like you work harder than feels fair, and you can't point to the exact moment that became true. Like conversations with this person leave you feeling like you made a mistake, even when you couldn't name what you did. Like your mood, without you choosing it, became tied to theirs. Like the version of yourself you are around them is somehow smaller than who you are everywhere else. That feeling has a name. And the name is Dark Triad. 3 psychological profiles: narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy. Each with their own control system. Each targeting a different part of your psychology. And each one specifically designed, whether the person knows it or not, to look like anything except what it is. Here are the 7 signs. You're already inside it. Let's get something straight before we go into the signs. Because the single biggest reason people miss dark triad behavior is that they're looking for the wrong version of it. They're looking for the obvious one. The person who talks about themselves at every dinner. The schemer rubbing their hands together. The dangerous one they'd clock immediately. That is not what we're talking about. The dark triad person in your actual life is probably none of those things. They are probably charming. Specifically, precisely charming, in a way that feels personal, like they see you specifically. And the reason that charm feels so different from ordinary attention is because it is different. Ordinary warmth is general. It radiates toward everyone. Dark triad charm is calibrated. It is built from a careful reading of exactly what you need to see, and then showing you that. Exactly that. Nothing more, nothing accidental. And once you understand that, once you understand that what felt like being seen was actually being mapped, every sign on this list starts to make complete sense. The dark triad is 3 profiles, and each one runs a different control system. The narcissist controls through your emotions, specifically through your hope that the best version of them is the real one, and everything else is temporary. The Machiavellian controls through your trust, through the slow, patient construction of a world where you need them, and you're not entirely sure when or how that happened. The psychopath controls through your empathy, through the specific exploitation of your capacity to feel, your instinct to help, your inability to walk away from someone who appears to be suffering. 3 systems, 3 targets, 1 shared objective, keeping you exactly where they need you, without you ever realizing that where you are was a choice they made, not you. 7 signs. Let's go through every single one.
Sign number 1, the warmth that gets rationed. In the beginning, they gave you everything. The full attention, the specific focus, the version of them that made you feel like the most interesting person they had ever encountered. And your brain, doing exactly what it's supposed to do, created a reference point, a version of this person that felt real, that felt like the truth of them. Now here is the sign. Once that reference point existed, they started controlling it, withdrawing it. Not constantly, not permanently, just enough for you to notice the absence, and then returning it, just long enough for your brain to flood with relief and the reference point to get reinforced as something worth working toward. The warmth wasn't love. It was inventory, strategically distributed, strategically withheld, to keep you in a state of perpetual pursuit. Not running away, not fully at ease, just close enough to almost have it, just far enough to keep reaching. If you are always slightly uncertain whether you're okay with this person, if their mood determines the temperature of the room and you've been adjusting to it automatically without deciding to, that is sign 1, and it was not accidental.
Sign number 2, the joke that isn't. You know this one, if you've lived it. It's the comment that lands somewhere specific, somewhere real, somewhere only a person who had been paying close attention, studying you, mapping your edges, could have aimed. And when it lands, when your expression shifts, they say, "I'm just joking. Can't you take a joke?" And now your reaction is the problem, not the comment. You. That is not humor. That is a calibration, a way of finding out exactly where your sensitivities live, and then owning the fact that they find them, while making it impossible for you to call it what it is without looking oversensitive. Low-key, one of the cleanest control moves on this entire list, because the weapon creates its own cover at the moment of impact. Sign number 3, moving the goalposts. You did everything right, said the right thing, made the gesture they told you they needed, changed the behavior they said was the problem, and it wasn't enough. The standard shifted. What would have been correct last week isn't correct this week. The finish line is always slightly further than where you just arrived. And the psychological effect of working toward a standard that consistently moves is that you never feel stable. You're always catching up, always in pursuit, always almost there. Almost is the exact psychological state all 3 Dark Triad profiles need you in. Not destroyed, not completely done, just uncertain enough to keep working, just hopeful enough to keep staying.
Before we get into sign 4, I want to ask you something real. How many of these first 3 did you recognize? Not in general, in a specific relationship, in a specific person, in something that is either happening right now or that you've been trying to make sense of for a long time. Drop it in the comments. Just a number. 1, 2, or 3. For how many of the first 3 you recognized. Or if all 3, write all 3 and keep watching. Because here's the thing. If you're reading comments on this video at 2 a.m., you're going to see numbers from people all over the world who recognize the exact same things you just did. And that matters. Not because it changes what happened to you, but because the most isolating part of these dynamics is the silence around them. The sense that what happened to you was too specific, too strange,
too hard to explain, to be something anyone else would understand. It isn't. Now, sign 4. And this is where we move from the narcissist's control into something colder, something more patient, something that by the time you recognize it has been running for significantly longer than you realized.
Sign number 4. The long game favor. The Machiavellian personality, the second profile of the Dark Triad, doesn't run on emotion. It runs on strategy. And the strategy is built on one specific principle. Make yourself indispensable. Not through genuine connection, through manufactured dependency. Here is what this looks like. They help you. Consistently. Generously. Precisely when you needed it. They know things. Have access. Open doors. Introduce you to the right people. And over time, without you choosing it, without you tracking when it started, you feel something that sits in your chest like an unpaid bill. A sense of debt. Shapeless. Unaccountable. But present. And that debt is not accidental. The Machiavellian person thinks in seasons. They will be generous to you today because your gratitude becomes useful later. They will absorb a loss now because it positions them for a gain 3 months from now. They will make themselves necessary to your life, socially, practically, informationally, so that removing them costs more than keeping them. And here is the sign you are inside this. You are reluctant to disappoint them, even when disappointing them would be completely reasonable, because somewhere beneath the surface, you feel like you owe them, and you're not entirely sure exactly why or when that started. That debt, that unlabeled obligation you didn't consciously agree to, was constructed piece by piece, over time, without your knowledge. Straight up, the most patient control move on this entire list, because it takes the longest to see. And by the time you do, it's been running the longest. Sign number 5. Playing both sides. This one requires you to think about a very specific kind of person in your life. Not the person you're in conflict with, the person you confide in about the person you're in conflict with. The one who listens, who seems to understand, who always has useful context about the other person's behavior, who occasionally mentions things that make you think, how did they know that? Here's the answer. They know it because they are also the other person's confidant. The person you confide in about the situation is also the confidant of the person the situation is about. And neither of you knows about the other. They aren't loyal to either side. They are loyal to the information. Both your perspective, both your vulnerabilities, both your versions of events, held simultaneously, in a position that gives them leverage over both directions, and complete deniability from either. The sign you're in this dynamic, you have a person in your life who always seems to know more than they should, who surfaces information in conversation, casually, that you can't trace back to a source, who is somehow on good terms with people who shouldn't coexist in the same social circle, who you would describe as one of the most socially intelligent people you know. But if you tried to write down specifically what they're loyal to, you couldn't answer that. That social intelligence isn't neutral. It's been built by collecting from every side. And the person at the center of all that information is never the one who doesn't have it.
Sign number 6, the seamless recovery. This is the psychopath sign. And before we go into it, I want to clear something up about what functional psychopathy looks like in a real relationship. Because most people hear that word and picture something immediately obvious, something dramatic. It isn't. The psychopathic person in your life is probably one of the most socially calibrated people you've ever met. They know exactly what to say, exactly when to say it. They read rooms faster than everyone else in them. They're calm in situations that destabilize everyone around them. And they are, specifically, precisely, charming to you. Not in a general way, in a way that feels tailored, like they studied what you specifically needed to see and then showed you that. Here is the sign. When they hurt you, and eventually they will, the recovery is too smooth. The apology hits every note. Not because they're sorry, because they've read exactly what a believable apology sounds like to you specifically, and they're running that script. There's no visible internal cost, no shame in the body, no residual discomfort in how they carry themselves the day after. They caused pain, witnessed it, and moved on from it with the energy of someone who just completed a task. And here's what's really wild about this sign. The recovery feels so genuine that your instinct is to feel guilty for noticing something's off. Like you're being uncharitable to someone who just apologized. Like you should be more grateful for the effort they made. That instinct, that specific guilt for noticing something wrong with a perfect apology, is not your problem. That is precisely what the psychopathic control system is designed to produce.
Sign number 7, the most important one. The one that shows up in some form across all 3 profiles. You are always the problem. Not through direct accusation, not always through argument, through implication, through framing, through the consistent, subtle positioning of every situation as a response to something you did. Their coldness, your fault. Their withdrawal, because of how you acted. Their anger, because of what you said. Their behavior in public, because of how you made them feel. And even when you know, clearly, rationally, that this isn't accurate, the doubt exists. The question exists. Did I actually do something? Am I missing something? Am I being too sensitive here? That doubt, that specific, persistent question about your own perception, is not self-reflection. It is the result of a control mechanism that requires you to distrust yourself. Because a person who trusts their perception is significantly harder to manage. Here is the clearest version of this sign. You spend more time analyzing your own behavior in the relationship than theirs. You prepare before conversations with them, reviewing what you might say that could go wrong. You feel responsible for outcomes that are clearly beyond your control. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking, what are they doing? And started only asking, what am I doing wrong? That shift, from examining the relationship to examining only yourself, was not organic. It was produced, consistently, deliberately, over time. And it is the single most effective control mechanism on this entire list, because it turns your own mind into the cage.
I need to stop here for a second. Because I know some of you are sitting with more than you expected coming into this video. 7 signs. And for some of you, it wasn't 1. It wasn't 2. It was most of them. In one relationship, or across several. And what comes with that recognition, before the clarity kicks in,
is usually something that feels a lot like grief. Not for the person, for the time, for the version of yourself that worked that hard, for something that wasn't what it appeared. Here's what I want you to hear. That version of you wasn't naive. The traits they targeted, your loyalty, your empathy, your capacity to commit, your willingness to believe the best in someone, those aren't weaknesses. Those are the exact traits worth going after, which is exactly why they were gone after. Drop a comment. Which sign hit hardest? Just the number, or the description if you want. And if what you're sitting with right now is bigger than a comment can hold, just write, I needed this. Because someone's gonna read it tonight who needed to know someone else was here too. Now, 2 questions that change everything about how you understand what just happened to you. Why didn't you see it? And what do you do now that you do? Both answers. Right now.
The question that everyone asks after they recognize a dark triad dynamic, why didn't I see it? And I want to answer this with precision, not comfort, because the actual answer is more validating than any comfort could be. You didn't see it because you weren't designed to. Not because you're not smart, not because you're not perceptive, because the human brain has a specific mechanism, cognitive consistency, that functions by maintaining a stable model of reality so you can function within it. What this means in practice, once you've decided someone is safe, once you've built a model of them as trustworthy, worth being close to, your brain begins filtering incoming information through that model. Confirmation of the model? Accepted. Contradiction of the model? Rationalized, minimized, reframed. Not because you're being foolish, because your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. And the dark triad person, whether they know the science or not, exploits this perfectly. Because they didn't start with the behavior you eventually experienced. They started with something that set the model high. Precisely the version of themselves that your brain was most likely to build a strong, positive model around. Warm, attentive, specific. The version you fell for. The version your brain decided was real. And then, the behavior shifted. Not overnight, not dramatically. 1 degree at a time. And each degree felt close enough to the last that the model stretched to accommodate it. Until you looked up, and the person you were dealing with now was nothing like the one the model was built on. But the model had followed them there, degree by degree, justification by justification. That is not a personality flaw. That is one of the most sophisticated psychological processes in human behavior, and it was used on you by someone who knew, instinctively or deliberately, exactly how it worked.
Beyond the model, there were specific tools used to keep the model intact. Let's name them, because naming them removes the confusion they were designed to create. Tool 1. Gaslighting. Not the dramatic version. Not the direct, that never happened. The operational version. You're being oversensitive. That's not what I said. That's how you took it. I've never seen anyone react this way. The consistent, low-grade reframing of your accurate perception as inaccurate. Until the most reliable thing in your reality, your own judgment, became the thing you trusted least. And once you stop trusting your own perception, you stop being able to recognize what's happening to you as it happens, which is exactly the point. Tool 2. Intermittent reinforcement.
the unpredictable reward schedule. Sometimes completely warm, sometimes completely cold. No pattern you could track. And here's the neuroscience, dead serious. Unpredictable rewards create stronger psychological dependency than consistent ones. The slot machine is more addictive than the vending machine. Not because it gives more, because you never know when it's going to give. And so you keep pulling. A person who is sometimes the exact version of themselves you fell for, and sometimes devastating, creates a psychological attachment that the consistently wonderful person never could. Your nervous system gets wired to the cycle, not to the person, to the cycle.
Tool 3. Strategic isolation. Not the dramatic kind, not you can't see your friends. The operational kind. Consistent low-grade friction between you and your support system. Comments that made you question the people around you. Situations that slowly narrowed the circle. The gradual reduction of the voices that might have seen what was happening, until the only voice that felt like it understood your situation was theirs. Tool 4. Making the exit expensive. Not through threats, through accumulated weight. The things they know about you. The history. The social landscape they've positioned themselves within. The version of yourself you became in the relationship. And the uncertainty about who you'd be without it. These 4 tools, working simultaneously, create a closed system where the exit seems harder than staying, where the confusion feels like your fault, where the person causing the damage is also the person you've been conditioned to turn to for relief from it. That is not a coincidence. That is architecture. 7 signs. Sign 1. The warmth being rationed, keeping you in perpetual pursuit of the version they showed you first. Sign 2. The joke that isn't, finding your edges and owning that they found them. Sign 3. Moving the goalposts, the standard that shifts every time you reach it. Sign 4. The long game favor, the manufactured debt you never agreed to carry. Sign 5. Playing both sides, the information broker, with no actual loyalty to either. Sign 6. The seamless recovery, the apology that hits every note with nothing behind it. Sign 7. You are always the problem. The systematic erosion of your trust in your own perception. All 7, across 3 profiles, with one shared function, keeping you off balance enough to stay controllable. And none of them work on a person who can see them clearly. That is not an exaggeration. The entire operational design of Dark Triad control depends on invisibility. The moment the sign is named, the moment the mechanism is visible, the system starts losing its grip. Not because naming it changes who they are, because it changes who you are in relation to them. And that is the only variable that was ever actually yours to control.
Here's what I want you to do before this video ends. Think about the relationship this video was about. The one that came to mind in the first 30 seconds. Not who it was, just what it felt like. The specific texture of it. How you felt in the hours after a difficult interaction. The way your mind worked when you were in it. Constantly reviewing, constantly reconstructing, trying to figure out where you went wrong. Now, I want you to ask yourself and be honest with yourself. How much mental energy have you spent trying to understand their behavior versus how much energy you've spent on yourself, on what you actually want, on what you actually think, on who you actually are outside of how they made you feel? Because here's what dark triad dynamics take most effectively. Not your time, not your stability, your attention. The constant redirecting of your own cognitive resources toward understanding them, managing them, surviving them, instead of building yourself. And that is the real cost. Not what they did, what you didn't do, couldn't do, while all of your attention was occupied. The recognition you have now is the beginning of that attention coming home. And what you do with it from here is entirely yours.
Before you go, one thing. If this video reached someone inside one of these dynamics right now, if they're watching this and recognizing something they haven't been able to name, share it with them. Not as a message, not as a confrontation, not with an explanation. Just send it. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can give someone who is confused and blaming themselves is the specific language for what's actually happening. Drop a comment below. All I want is which sign you recognized first. Just the number. Just sign 1 through 7. Then scroll through and see how many people wrote the same number as you. Because every person in those comments was in a room with you that they couldn't quite describe for longer than they should have been, and finally has the words for it. Now, in the next video, we're going to do something that very few psychology channels ever actually go into. We're going to talk about what happens in public versus what happens in private with the exact same person. Because the most dangerous thing about dark triad behavior isn't what they show you. It's the gap between what they show you and what they show everyone else. The psychology of the social mask, how it gets built, how it's maintained, and most importantly, the specific detectable moments when it slips, is a video that will change how you read every social situation you walk into for the rest of your life. Because once you know what to look for, the mask is never invisible again.